So, welcome back to Good Vibrations to all the regulars and everyone that's discovering this series for the first time. Loads of interesting conversations with a wide variety of people we've had over the last couple of years, and we're continuing that today as we take a trip out to the west of Ireland, and I'm on the line to Thomas Sheridan. Hey Thomas.
Hey Mark, nice to talk to you.
Yep, great to have you along. So, a quick overview of yourself. You are an independent alternative artist, author, satirist, musician, stand-up comic, filmmaker and researcher, but you know all that. That's a lot of job titles to have.
Renaissance man is a good way of opting out of the matrix. Even though I have a regular job on the weekends, I found it was the most effective way to, if you could sort of like do many things at once, it was the easiest way to actually survive outside having a 9-to-5 job.
Absolutely, I'm all for that. And you're the author of Unveiled of the Psyche, alongside a few other titles.
Yes, Unveiled of the Psyche, which deals with social engineering. The two books on psychopathology, puzzling people about psychopathology at the social level, at the personal level, and Defeat the Demons about psychopathology at the cultural level. And my new book, Walpurgis Night, Volume 1, about basically the greatest psyop that was ever played, the destruction of the German people during the end of the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to talk about something that we've not really covered on this series before. It's a slightly different approach. I just want to look into the sort of division and infighting and general lack of unity that we've seen for quite some time in the truth alternative scene. Given what so many of us have come to realise we're up against with the whole control system and all the corruption and all the ways that we're being enslaved, you might imagine that those of us that have figured out what's going on would all be pretty much on the same page and supporting each other. But the more you look at it, it turns out that's very far from the truth. And as the weeks go by, there just seems to be that much more bitching and finger pointing and people falling out with other people that they really should be cooperating with, and the whole scene just seems to be getting more splintered by the day. Has that been your experience?
Yes, and it's unfortunate because it shows a lack of maturity in this scene. There's a desperate lack of maturity, and that's where it all comes from. So many people in this scene have to learn how to grow up and be adults, and so many of them don't want to, and so many of them are very lost in an infantile notion. This is where the fracturing comes from. Yes, there are shills. Yes, there are infiltrators. Yes, there are shit stirrers and troublemakers. But there's an awful lot of infantilism. There's a lot of people who have a pop star mentality towards people and groups in this movement, where they wrap all their hopes or all their needs and all their future, expectations around a certain figure or a certain group within this movement. And if they fail to deliver, or they don't say something, or they say something that they don't agree with, there's an instant, almost like tearing the pop star's poster off the wall and putting up a poster of the new pop star. There's a lot of that kind of childishness goes on, and that has to stop. And more importantly, the ones who don't stop it have to be routed out of this movement. You've no place belong here. Join the Socialist Workers' Party, or go support a football team. You do not belong in this movement if that's how you think. Now, that lack of maturity is very upsetting for lots of reasons. Mainly, one, because people like us do a lot of very hard work for almost no reward, and it's not just us, it's groups as well. And then suddenly you'll find some dimwit on the internet who does nothing except skin up all day, or watch YouTube videos all day, or has some kind of paranoid personality disorder, starts creating hate sites, YouTube videos, or just whispering campaigns about someone they never met, know nothing about them, and they completely dehumanize them because it allows them to feel that they're some kind of hero at their level. This is wrong. And these people, instead of someone seeing a video by some gobshite, attacking Mark Devlin or Thomas Sheridan, instead of instinctually, sharing it on Facebook or saying, oh, these two are shills or whatever like that, how about doing something called wisdom, where you sit down, you watch the video, you wonder why the person behind it is hiding their identity. If they're not hiding identity, you check out to see if they're involved in a cult. You check out to see if they're involved in some dodgy history, or you just check out if you look at their photograph and they give you the creeps before you share it. This is a huge problem. This sort of like impulsive sort of need to route out shills. Again, it's immaturity. Now, one of the issues I really, really have is this whole idea of that if you say one thing or take an interest in one subject, automatically you must dismiss all the work that this person has done. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen this yourself, Mark, right? Yeah.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
It's incredible. It nauseates me. And I'll tell you, have groups like I agree 100% with nobody. I agree 100% not even with myself. Because there are times where I will have a reevaluation of my belief packages and I'll move on and say, I was talking bollocks about that. It's time to go on.
Yeah,
I was
it's good
wrong.
to do that.
And that's the end of it. That's the end of it. Oh no, with some of these types, it's a whole different thing. Like, for instance, right, you have groups like Truth Juice, right? I've a lovely bunch of people wherever you go in England and you meet them. They're all really, really nice people.
Yeah.
They have interests in things that I just have. I would not, like, aliens, talking to aliens, all kinds of things like that. In a million years, I've no interest in it. But yet I still respect all these people. I consider many of them my friends. They're all decent, good folks. And that's what they do. This is their lives. I have stuff that I would talk about that they would think was bullshit. And that's okay. We still accept each other as human beings on a human surface. And then you'll have people say, I don't like Truth Juice because they did this, or they had this one speaker who went around talking. So we dismiss the entire history of Truth Juice. We dismiss the whole thing of UK column. There are things about UK column that I'm not a big fan of. That's okay, but I still have very high respect for people like Brian, and I love Lou and all those people in there. And I know they're all good-hearted, decent people who are really making a difference. Politically, sometimes they're not for me, but so what? That's life. We deal with this. It's almost like a Nazification of this movement, where you go around looking for Ubermensch, or perfect human beings that never make a mistake. Yeah. All the people that I'm closest with in this movement, all of them, have things on some levels that I fundamentally disagree with, but I still consider them fine human beings, and I'll stand up for them no matter what. And even if I don't agree with someone, I'll try not to talk shit about them and I'll never do it on a personal level. You will never see a smear campaign on my websites. I don't do that. I'm a man. Whenever someone says to someone, I say it to their face. I'm a man. I'm not a pussy. Okay? And we need more of that in this group.
Well,
men and women who are just like, stand up and say, I don't like what you're into your face, rather than been hiding behind a website or something like that.
That's a good point. I mean, what we've got is an infestation of armchair warriors, keyboard warriors, whatever you want to call them, who hide behind anonymous login names. I mean, this is a very good point that you raised on one of your blogs. The fact that anything you ever put out there, you put your name to, your real name, and I do the same. I don't use login names, but so many of these warriors will just have a sort of one-word login name to conceal their real identity, and then off they go, ranting and raving and spouting opinions here and there. And I was listening to Mark Passio, the US researcher, who was doing a podcast all about this a while back, and he made the point that whenever you look into any of these people and try and find any work that they've put out there themselves, any research that they've done, any YouTube videos that they've made, any conferences they're appearing as a speaker on, any podcasts that they've done, any books that they've written, any web series that they're behind, you always get the same result, which is they've done nothing. Absolutely nothing. All they do is take work that other people have had the balls and the bottle to go out there and put out under their own names and pick it to pieces and try and find fault with it. They're using their own time and energy for these negative, pointless means when they could actually be doing something constructive that helps humanity. And there's so many of these goddamn characters out there, isn't there?
And Mr. Passio is bang on about that. They do nothing except bitch and moan.
That's right.
And that's the easiest thing in the world to do. They talk about themselves as being, I'm not a sheeple anymore, and I'm a sheeple 2.0, because you're still behaving in the way that like EastEnders and Coronation Street trained you to behave. That's how you're thinking, like a tabloid journalist. You're a trash tabloid journalist. That's what you are. That's as far you should be working for Murdoch with your mentality. Now, having said that, there should be an element of investigation within this movement. but only if it's justified. Don't attack a person personally. I've no problem. I would never ever attack a person personally, their personal life, anything like that. There's far too much of that tabloid, idiocy going on as well. Another aspect of these individuals is that they do nothing and they give nothing. But at the same time, too, as you said, they create a lot of energy that's wasted, that's needed for other things. Let us work, okay? If you don't agree with us, ignore us, okay? Or you just say, oh, he's full of shit or she's full of shit, I don't care. But do your own work and we'll do ours. Do not be sabotaging from within. Now, there's a responsibility of people who are not like that to not indulge these motherfuckers, because that's a big problem as well. You should not indulge them. If it's obvious that they have an axe to grind, and look, if someone spends all their time, 24 hours a day, non-stop, attacking an author, a researcher, a filmmaker in this movement, they are mentally ill. Let's get that straight. It is not normal for a human being to spend all their time obsessing over someone and trying to demolish them based on they not believing in their theories. That is mental illness. There's something wrong with that person. They're no different than stalkers. They're unhealthy, unstable people. They're not. Even if they have a point that's made, they make the point and that's, oh, fair enough, and go on. There's these guys who've been 3-4 years doing this kind of thing, and they're obsessed. There's one, look, I have a lot of problems with David Icke, okay? I don't have a problem with him as a person or a man. It's not him. A lot of his work I'm not into, right? But I try for the most part to keep my mouth shut about it. It's just not for me. There's some guy, he's some kind of like born-again Christian guy who, he's obviously in love with David Icke, because not only does he spend all the time making videos about what how evil David Icke is, he acts like he wants to marry him. This guy's not normal, folks, and people like him are not normal. You don't waste your life on something like that. If you have that kind of crusade, there's some serious problem in your life. And so stop sharing their videos and indulging them for years on end, and start realizing that you're no better than them because you're actually supporting someone who obviously has something wrong with their personality.
And as you mentioned earlier, the first kind of refuge of somebody that seems to be losing an argument on a Facebook chat thread or a forum thread or something, if somebody comes up with some information they don't agree with or which contradicts them, automatically they dismiss that person as a shill or a disinfo agent. Oh, you must be MI5, must be an insider because you don't agree with me. And it's ridiculous because these people are taking the stance of their own opinion being the criterion for everything. They themselves are so important and they've got this whole thing so sussed that they are the ultimate arbiters of truth. And out of these 7.5 billion people on the planet, if you don't agree with their particular individual opinion, you've got to be a shill. And I was quite flattered this week because I got my first accusation of being a shill, MI5 disinfo agent, insider. So I really feel like I've made it in this truth game now.
Congratulations.
Because I'm a DJ first and foremost, and the mark of a successful DJ is often how many other DJs you've pissed off and how many haters you've got. If you're doing something right and you're successful, you get a whole bunch of people all twisted up and all mad about you. And I'm very glad that in the truth game, I've got my first accusation of being a shill, I think.
well, now that you've actually broken your shill cherry, to use a crude term.
I've had a shilling.
Yeah, a shilling. You're now Shilly the Kid, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're nobody till somebody shills you. Yeah,
well, actually, that's what's so stupid about these people. Because anyone who knows anything about how intelligence services work, if you listen to the work of Tom Secker, anyone knows how spy culture works and all this stuff, and anyone who's ever read a book on espionage and infiltration, the shill is the one that you trust the most. And a shill would never piss you off online. Because what they do is they win as many friends as possible by issuing issuing statements and opinions that would never offend anyone within the group they're trying to infiltrate. So if there's a group is interested in UFOs, they will go in there and they will believe everything that in that person. They will take a sort of a data profiling of everyone in that group, and they'll say, well, the general consensus is among them is that they believe in, say, something like Roswell, right?
Yeah.
So he or she will become Mr. Roswell. You know, that kind of a thing. So he or she will always have an opinion that will never differ from the body politic of the group. So that's how stupid these people who call everyone shills are, because they don't even have a basic understanding of how the intelligence services, journalists, coppers, and other infiltrators work. They infiltrate and they work. They're so successful because they don't piss anyone off, because they don't offer radical opinions.
Yeah. Yeah, these people throwing the shill accusations around need to pull the curtains, take out those 3 days' worth of dinner plates that have piled up in the room, you know, and all those cups of tea that their mums brought them, you know, make the bed, go out, get some sunlight, and go out and live and do something with your life instead of hiding yourself away in your basement on Facebook 24/7, you know, just the way I feel about it. Another point I just wanted to make, it might seem like a small point or a trivial point, but when I first started out on this path, I guess I was quite naive in assuming that people in the sort of truth movement, alternative movement, that have figured out that there's something desperately wrong in the world and we're all being enslaved and all that sort of thing, would generally display better courtesy and politeness and consideration towards each other than the people you come across in the general population. You just assume that you're going to meet a better breed of person, you know, a more moral person, if you like, or a more polite person. But I've been quite disappointed to find that's not the case. You know, in so many situations I've had emails and messages unanswered. I've written a very polite, courteous email to somebody asking a question, or, you know, even offering an interview, and you don't get any kind of reply back, even when you send a couple of reminders. Then you get people saying just what suits the moment. They've got no intention of staying true to their word, and then you never hear from them again. And this is all stuff that you encounter in regular everyday life, particularly in the DJ world, which is not known for its politeness and courtesy, you know. But I've offered interviews to artists, alternative artists that make meaningful, conscious music as part of my podcast, and you just don't hear back.
No.
and on Facebook, you can send a message and you can see when that person has seen the message, and you still don't get a reply. And like I say, I might be a bit old-fashioned in my approach. I'm probably in the minority in worrying about it, but I just didn't really expect people to be rude and discourteous on this scene. But unfortunately, many of them are, you find.
This is the alternative elite. My friend Kira Young, who runs the Psychopaths in Charge blog and has a show on Sunday nights on Type 1, she talks about this all the time, the alternative elite. They're at a certain level. They're not. They won't go on Mark Devlin's show because you're not on BBC. Yet they talk about if Mark Devlin was on BBC, if Mark Devlin was on a big American FM network like Coast to Coast, oh, they'd be brown nosing you big time to get on.
Probably,
yeah. There's a lot of that kind. Oh, Tom, I see it myself. I've seen it myself and how my career developed. Nothing was happening until I went on Red Ice. Red Ice is great. I mean, I think I love Red Ice. I love Henry. But as soon as I got my first profile there in 2011, suddenly I was one of the boys. I was one of the big shots.
Part of the club.
And I'm not like that at all. I'm like Mr. Ordinary, Mr. Down to Earth. You can have a pint with me. I don't sit around pontificating words of wisdom. I'd rather sit around, tell jokes, and have a laugh. That's how I am in real life. And my serious stuff, I'm very, very serious about. But that's just an aspect of me. It's not how I live my life. So people don't think I'm this kind of great, wise voice of reason and anything like that. That's my work. And I feel passionate about that in a different way. But I live my life like I'm an ordinary human being. And so I saw that myself. So, you know, it's a funny old thing. And these ones who are in the alternative elite, they cultivate this kind of holier than thou attitude, I've noticed. That they're sort of like the people around them are kind of like spellbound by them.
Hey, it's sort of like truth masons, the truth masons.
Or truth religious leaders, cult leaders or something. It's not good. It's not healthy. And you'll find that the ones who are the biggest, the members of the truth elite at the top are the ones who have the least to contribute. All they do is spout cliches and platitudes. And very few of them, and not all of them, do original work, do original research. They just issue platitudes about all is love and we are all one and all this crap that people want to hear the same things over and over again. Human beings are funny that way. There was a book by Charles Duhigg, I can't remember his name, Duhigg, called The Power of Habit. And he just like basically shows that when a person gets to one comfort zone, that's challenged, Then they get to another comfort zone, which is like what would be the alternative movement. All they want to hear the same memes over and over again. Nanothermite, chemtrails are being gassed by the Rockefellers. They, all is love, all is. They want to hear the same things over and over again. And you'll often find that the people who are the most successful in this business are the ones who do that. They don't come up with anything original or anything new. And I'm not saying all of them. Some of them are very good, actually. And then that's okay, too, because some of them are kind of good entertainers. They're good spokespeople. So they're probably good at getting stuff out there already. But I'll always go for someone, what picks up my ears is when I hear something, when I listen to a radio or listening to your show, listening to anyone's show, when someone comes up with something I've never heard before or something that already exists from a different angle, that's what really hooks me. Bang, I'm on, right? But that for so many people in this movement, when they'd hear that for the first time, they'd go, shill!
Yeah, that doesn't fit in with the way I see the world, so it can't be right.
Yeah.
And, the control system must love seeing how those of us that claim to be opposing it just can't seem to get our shit together and find any common ground to work on. And a criticism that you often hear is that conspiracy theorists merely focus on all the problems that we're facing, and people say that you're therefore empowering the problems by focusing your attention on them rather than offering any kind of practical solution. Then when somebody does, I'm going to use the reset as an example here. I don't know what your personal feelings are on the reset, but I use it as an example to illustrate the point here. We've had the reset movement here in the UK, which came out a few months ago, and it proposes an empowering practical solution that people can get behind. But the knives have come out and there's been lots of finger pointing and accusations and counter accusations, people saying don't trust the reset, it's an inside job, and then other people are saying no, it's not, you don't know what you're talking about. And so all the bitching and moaning and finger pointing has started again, and it just seems as if we can't really unify. We can't find solutions on which all of us can agree.
Well, I have mixed feelings about that, Mark, to be honest with you. I'm not a big fan of a movement or a group or an organisation coming out of this movement. I'm nothing against people who are getting together and trying something new. That's all very good and well. But I think the real power of this alternative movement is the fact that we don't have any centralised structure. And this is what Russell Brand is about. This is what the control system wants more than anything else. They want the national truth movement, or they want the International Council of Alternative Thinkers that has a charter, has a constitution, has
and a leader.
And a leader, and then you can get that's what they want. What drives them mad is the fact that that we are separate. I'll never join an organisation. I come totally from the Groucho Marx thing of I wouldn't join a club that would have me as a member.
Yeah.
The wisdom of that is now
independent all the way.
And also local groups are great too. I think it's local groups like in your neighbourhood or your town that doesn't have a formal structure but actually trying to do things locally in a casual way. I love all that kind of stuff because it brings people together and shows people in this movement who may feel alone that they're not alone and kinds of things like that. And they do have people that have the same feelings as them. But I don't know enough about the reset thing. I've only ever heard the name, so I know it's a UK thing. So for me, it would be a bit kind of exotically living over here.
Yeah.
But
I just use it as an example of the way that when somebody does come out with a solution and says, hey folks, this is what we've been waiting for, let's all get behind this, then immediately you get a whole bunch of folks saying, no, can't trust it, no, this isn't the one.
Well, I would be like that myself. I'd have to admit that I would be like that if someone said, this is the one, this is what we join. I would be out all immediately. The only things I'm interested in are organic movements that happen by themselves and don't have an organisation. Like I was very critical of the Zeitgeist movement, not because I thought they were evil, because I just thought it was the wrong way to go. 90% in the Zeitgeist movement were well-meaning, decent people. Same with the Occupy movement, well-meaning, decent people. But to me personally, I'm not a joiner of clubs. To me, I'm a lone warrior. That's what works best for me. If joining groups and organizations works best for other people, that's fine. That's fine. That's okay. But I would never call someone a shill for doing that. I would never say to them that they're trying to corrupt something, because I know 90%, just like I give Russell Brand a hard time, but I know most of the people that follow him, even though they're completely misguided, I know their hearts are in the right place.
They're well-meaning, yeah.
Yeah, and that's again back to the maturity thing.
Yeah. Let's get on to Brand in a short while. But we've mentioned shills, of course, and, the accusations of being disinfo agents and stuff, and it's a common criticism, it's a common insult. But there are genuine shills, of course, we know this, and infiltration does take place. And as you said, whenever there's any kind of organisation or movement, you can expect it to be infiltrated. It's just going to happen. On the subject of infiltration, we can't really do it justice without addressing the situation with the People's Voice, I feel, which I was actually a part of in terms of contributing a show. I did my weekly conscious music show, The Sound of Freedom, on the People's Voice from when it started up until April. And I chose to leave in April because by that point there were lots of unanswered questions, lots of anomalies, lots of discrepancies, things that didn't add up about the People's Voice. And I had my own reasons for leaving, which involved communication and organisation and courtesy and lack of it. So I just took the choice to, depart from that organisation. And since then, of course, there's lots of things going on. There's been a public falling out between David Icke and Sean Adel Tabatabai. We had the departure of Sonia Poulton at the start of the year, which pretty much spelt the beginning of all the questions about the People's Voice. And I know you've had a bit to say about your own views on it. I just wondered if you'd care to recap on any of your observations.
When it first came out, I couldn't see the point of it. We have YouTube. We have all endless numbers of people reaching a vast audience through all the independent websites, radio stations, blogging, vlogging, everything. Yeah. So why did we need a central point? Right, that'll start. Why did we need a kind of an alternative BBC? Why did we need that? Okay, That first of all didn't interest me. Right. Secondly, the next thing about it that kind of put me off was the idea that if you didn't donate this money, it was the end of the world, and that really pissed me off because that's the kind of thing TV evangelists do. If we don't get $10,000 by the end of the second day, Satan has won. Satan has won. That bothered me. Now I know quite a couple of people that were involved in the People's Voice, yourself and a few others that are lovely people, lovely folks, and they got involved for all the right reasons.
Well, again, we were well-meaning. We only got involved for the best reasons as we saw it,
and they did good work. But when the Sonia Poulton thing happened, I don't know Sonia Poulton personally. I've never met the woman. I've seen her saying nice things about me, but and there was I watched her show, and it was very, very good guest on it. It was kind of the flagship show, although I think it needed better production and direction to actually make it look more professional. But that was the show that could have launched the People's Voice into the mainstream. It definitely could have. She has it for mainstream TV, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're selling good information. And when she was gone, the inherent lack of professionalism of that organization came screaming true. Now, anyone who's worked in business, or big business like myself, the number one rule is when something like this happens, you shut your mouth, you say nothing, or you say, we've have a disagreement in our philosophy, we've decided to go separate ways. That's how you professionally do it. The only person who did that during that fiasco, who behaved as a professional, was Sonia Poulton. She was the only one who did. The rest, I was shocked by some of the statements that were coming on the People's Voice Facebook page. They were infantile, they were hysterical, they were just wrong, they were screaming lack of professionalism. And then having people who were, emailing me, who are big fans of that whole scene, saying terrible things about the woman that they didn't know was true. This had just been infiltrated through the whispering campaign that had been sent out by these infinite love types, and it pissed me off no end. And it made me very, very glad that I never got involved with them. And I've noticed some very decent people in there, but I knew from the beginning the business model didn't make any sense from a commercial point of view. We live in a world where money matters. That's the end of it. We can't live on love. And the business structure of it just seemed to be based on getting people who meant well to volunteer for free. And all that does in the end is you don't get the big professionals, the ones who can, and when I say professionals, I don't mean money people, I mean competent journalists, people like Sonia Paulton and people like that. You're not going to get them to stay on board. And second, because they're going to want more and more resources to do better and better work. You're not going to get them on board. And volunteers, all that does is it creates resentment. If they spend all day working there for no money, they'll suddenly turn on you. That kind of a thing. And I don't know if that happened there. You'd probably tell me about it. But am I right or am I wrong or am I off base here?
Well, I never actually worked out of the office. I only ever produced my show remotely from home and sent it in. The original plan was that I was going to turn up each week and do my show live, but it didn't work out that way. So I was never a part of the daily happenings in the office. And from what I hear about what the atmosphere was like there, I'm very glad that I wasn't, because I can't imagine the energy was particularly pleasant to be a part of. I've heard stories of disgruntled volunteers, and I've read some of their accounts. I've read all sorts of stories about the sort of shenanigans that went on in the office, which may or may not be true. But I think the common denominator is the fact that it didn't turn out to be the sort of channel that we were told it would be. It wasn't delivering the type of programming that so many of us expected it to. Nothing about it felt right, really, and nothing about it seemed to work from day one.
Well, a few people have said that to me, that the whole idea was to be set up, it was hardwired for failure, which is incredibly cynical. And let's not say that's true, because we may be, saying things about people here that's not fair. Again, we're rumoring as well.
We don't know. We can only speculate.
We don't know. So let's not be bastards. Well, me anyway. I don't want to be bastard about it. And that's the way. I think we just be nice about it. But I do think I totally agree with everything you say. It didn't feel right. There was an energy there that was not right. There was something about that big ass donate button was very off-putting on the page there. Again, TV evangelism, send us your money, put your hand on the screen so Jesus can save you, all that kind of thing. There seemed to be an element of that there. And also, if you look at what groups like Red Ice and UK Column and others do on a very limited budget. UK Column are literally run out of a closet. I'm not kidding you. The studio is literally a closet in an office building in downtown Plymouth with a blue screen. And if you see the output that they put out daily, news stories on a nothing budget, and then you see you compare that to what the People's Voice is doing with a healthy budget, it's obvious that something was very, very wrong there.
Yeah. Programming can be put out at low cost or no cost at all. I host my podcast on SoundCloud, and I pay an annual fee, which isn't that much, and I've got unlimited potential there to post up audio all through the year. And then you've got Red Ice Radio, as you say, which is all audio-based. They put some videos up, but they don't have a TV studio as such. And they just host podcasts. And I would imagine that they're able to keep the costs significantly lowered by just keeping their output in audio form, which is enough for a lot of people. You don't have to have in-vision stuff to get the information. And in fact, many people find it more convenient to just absorb audio information. I certainly do. I burn programs to CD, and I listen to them in the car when I'm driving late at night. That's how I get all my knowledge. To me, it's a distraction to have to look at a screen. So it strikes me that this operation could have started out doing podcasts and a few YouTube videos and just doing on a low-key kind of basis, low-budget basis, and then build gradually from there and tread cautiously and see what the reaction is and build organically and gradually.
It hit the ground running on a wing and a player. That's just doomed to failure. It's not going to work. You build everything from the grassroots up.
While we're on similar kind of ground, I just want to get into Russell Brand briefly. I apologise for the fact that I know you've spoken about him quite a few times and had a bit to say in the past weeks and months, and there may be a few people groaning as if to say, not bloody Russell Brand again. But he does keep popping up, and he has divided opinion in a big way in this truth alternative scene, and everyone seems to have an opinion on him. My own personal stance on him is I never particularly liked the guy as a comedian before he came out as this guru of the scene. I always thought that to be a comedian you had to be funny, but maybe that's just me. And there's a lot of things about his past which ring a few alarm bells for me. hosting the original Big Brother shows, you know, given how Big Brother's been used for social engineering and the Orwellian overtones of it all. His association with the BBC, close mate of Jonathan Ross, you know, BBC man. His marriage to Katy Perry, MK Ultra mind control subject, almost certainly. And that very strange video that you can get on YouTube where he flashes that ring that says obey, and she seems to sort of instantly switch into an alternative personality, and some people have said he may well be a handler. Then he's wearing Baphomet t-shirts and rings, and there's the case of tattoos that seem to appear and disappear between different photos, and some people have speculated on whether they could be fake. That's just my own personal stance on him. Like I say, everyone seems to have an opinion. I just feel it's worth addressing him quickly before we move on, and I just wondered what your observations were.
He's an idiot.
Okay.
That's it. He's an idiot. He's an idiot who has, for some reason, been given the offer.
Yeah.
And willingly took the offer. End of story. And I know when he was given the offer. He was given the offer after the Sashagate scandal. Up until that, he was just like a smutty, no talent MTV presenter. He goes on the Jonathan Ross show. He calls up Andrew Sachs. Sorry, that's Saxgate. Sorry, I meant. He calls up Andrew Sachs and tells Andrew Sachs that he shagged his granddaughter live on BBC Radio in front of millions of people, and goes to the old guy. He says to him, she was consensual, but she wasn't menstrual. Like, so basically, he said, I'm sorry to use, you know, crude language, but he fucked his granddaughter because she wasn't on her period on live radio, caused a man to, that's the only reason he did it, Mr. Spiritual. Then, you know, and we've all made mistakes in our lives, we've all done things we shouldn't have done, but I don't think anyone's ever done anything like that on live radio that I can remember. And you know, I don't think I've ever even heard Howard Stern, who I'm actually a fan of, go that level, okay? And this is on the so-called public broadcaster, so it's paid for with tax. You know, it's paid for with basically a tax. Now, he vanishes for a while, heads off to Hollywood, does his little whole Hollywood thing, and then reappears in the UK again as Jesus Christ. So in between then, the Saxgate, and now he got the offer. He got the offer. Look, someone said to him, almost certainly the Fabian Society or the London School of Economics, there's this thing called the Awakening Up movement, the Truth movement. They're getting really big. They're getting really popular. And they believe all this kind of stuff, that governments are evil and all this kind of BBC are evil, that shelters paedophiles. You're going to take them over as their messiah, but you're going to steer them back into the mainstream. You can talk about spiritual consciousness all you want. You can do all that kind of thing. You can mention stuff about how bad Fox TV, and all may tell them things they already know. Yeah. But Russell, when we send you out there as the savior of the truther Christ, never talk about 9/11. Don't talk about fracking. Don't talk about GMOs. Do not talk about the BBC sex scandals. And if you do, swallow it in a world of mindless waffle. So it just looks like you're saying you're really clever, like you did with the Rolf Harris video the other day. And they will follow you because this is they're so desperate for a Christ. They're so desperate for a God. And, you know, you're to take them off. You're to lead them away from, because we don't like what they're up to. We don't like the fact that they're actually catching on to us. And that's what happened. And I don't care what anyone says. And I'm right about it. And it's as clear as day. And the circumstantial evidence is his girlfriend, Gemma Khan of the Goldsmith family, billionaire bankers, City of London, Wall Street, very heavily involved in South African apartheid during the slavery days, I might add, which we never talked about. He talks about distribution of wealth. Well, give me your money. Give me your money, Russell Brand. I'm broke. Lots of people are broke. Give them your money directly. Yeah. He goes to London like Jesus entering Damascus, stands on the stage with his shirt off in a Jesus Christ Dionysian pose, holds his arms out wide to look like he's being crucified deliberately. That was all staged. Then gets on stage and says nothing about, you know, we did that and all this crap, and everyone is like spellbound by him. I'm sorry. If you at this point are still spellbound by Russell Brand, okay, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care what you think about what I'm saying about this. You're an idiot. and you're Sheeple 2.0, and that's the end of it.
I'll tell you what it reminds me of. A few years ago, well, it's 2005, you had Kanye West, the rapper, who up until that point had been a very well-respected kind of conscious hip-hop artist. He put out meaningful music. His original album, The College Dropout, 2003, was a kind of modern classic. Lots of great points he was making in that music. It was inspiring, it was uplifting, many of the tracks were. He appeared on a telethon in 2005 in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, and he was on screen with Mike Myers, the Austin Powers actor, and they're reading off a script. But Kanye West goes off script for a moment, and spontaneously, right off the top of his head, he says George Bush doesn't care about black people. And this went out on live TV. And then he gets back on script. And ever since that moment, I noticed Kanye started to change. His music output changed, and it gradually sort of degenerated into the sort of toxic, mind-controlling garbage that he's putting out now. Absolute just filth and rubbish. And, he started behaving erratically in public, and he started spouting his famous rants, and he just became a total arsehole. And it all seems to have stemmed from that moment where he went off script and off cue. And when you think back to the Russell Brand Saxgate thing, the fact that he talked about Andrew Sachs's granddaughter on that live BBC show, and that was obviously off script, that was a spontaneous thing. It seems that from that point on, Russell was kind of recruited to start to do a bit of work for the control system. And I wonder if there are parallels between these two instances, that the minute you go off script and start doing your own thing, the control system that likes to puppeteer you ain't having it. And that's when you're called on to start to doing a bit of work for them.
Well, I think you may be onto something then, Mark, because look at Bono and U2. I mean, everybody slags off U2 and Bono for all the globalist stuff, quite rightly, I might add, to getting their pictures taken with getting his pictures taken with George Bush.
Indeed.
But if you look at U2, if you go back and find old copies of the New Musical Express, Sounds, or Rolling Stone, or any magazine that Bono was interviewed in pre-Live Aid, up until the War album, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Unforgettable Fire album, which is a very interesting. Those four albums are actually quite interesting albums. They deal with very dark themes. Bono was lashing into George Bush over everything from Grenada to, not George Bush, Ronald Reagan, hitting him with the CIA, big time going on about the Contras. I mean, these were hardcore issues at the time. The murder of nuns down in El Salvador by the CIA. I mean, he was getting involved in some very deep stuff, Bono. Suddenly he's won up the control system, people, and the hardcore opinion is gone. And even their whole sound changes. So, U2 came out of punk rock. What were they doing playing like Bruce Springsteen? Something happens to them. And in 1989, I think early U2 were quite a good band. I really do. And I think they really they were politically right on. They did a lot of good stuff here in Ireland with they made statements against the IRA that were and the loyalists that were quite dangerous back in the time they did it. And, so there's a video of U2 playing a gig in Dublin, and Bono is acting very strange on stage, and he says, "We're going to have to vanish for a while now and allow us to think it all up again." And then they came back as the U2 bullshit globalist band they are today.
Yeah.
So I think, look,
something happens to
you're in the music business. I was in the music business, right, in New York. We both know that there's a certain point where if you want to go to the next level, deals are made with lesser demons.
Absolutely.
And eventually
right.
That trail of lesser demons leads to the devil,
And
which is what
it's
Michael Jackson called Tommy Mottola. He said Tommy Mottola is a devil.
Exactly. Those were his words. And an astute observer can pinpoint the moment in an artist's career where that seems to happen.
Yeah.
You can see where Kanye's music changed, where U2 changed, as you just said. And you can apply that to the Beatles as well. I've just done a podcast
Big time.
on this theory that Paul McCartney may be really dead and he was replaced by an imposter. It doesn't really matter what you think of that theory, but either way, whether you think Paul McCartney was replaced or the Paul McCartney we have today is the original one, you've got McCartney now hanging out with the Queen, throwing up Baphomet symbols at concerts, and hobnobbing with the establishment. And that's a far cry from the original sort of ethos of the Beatles. And there was a point where the Beatles music obviously changed around about 1966. It went from that simplistic sort of R&B rock and roll music to all the psychedelic stuff. And you got to wonder, is there a point where someone steps in and says to these artists, okay, it's time to elevate you to the next level now. This is what we need you to do for us. And I suppose if you get made an offer like that, you can't really say no. You could say no. You could say no, but the consequences would be pretty bad, I would suggest. And so that's why so many of these artists figure that they've got no alternative but to say yes and play ball.
Well, look at the body count in rock and roll. Just look at the body count. And not only of people in bands, but also their family members. Lots of them seem to have children who've drowned, or girlfriends who've been murdered, or mysteriously found dead.
Mick Jagger's girlfriend just the other week.
And on the subject of the Rolling Stones, they started out as a basic, classic, very good British blues band. And at some point in the late 60s, Brian Jones is found dead. And the next thing you know, they're hanging out with people like Kenneth Anger.
Yeah.
And Sympathy for the Devil, Beggar's Banquet, like Exile and all. Let's be honest here. Some of those records are fantastic. But at the same time, too, the band becomes something else completely different. There's even an interview on YouTube with Bob Dylan where he's being interviewed by Ed Bradley of the American TV show 60 Minutes, and he says to him, I made a deal with the big man.
That's right.
And Ed Bradley says, who's the big man? And Bob Dylan goes, the biggest, baddest man of them all.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's something we all know that there's demons along the way, but eventually when you get to a certain level, you meet the devil himself, and that's when you get the big offer.
And there's a quote from Ozzy Osbourne as well, being interviewed years ago, and Ozzy says, it's as if I've been taken over and somebody else is controlling me. And he says, I hope it's not who I think it is.
It could be his wife.
Well, quite
Remember,
possibly.
she's a dodgy history, Don Arden's daughter, and he was a big time gangster in London.
Yeah.
I mean, he destroyed the Small Faces band.
Yeah.
So there's other aspects to it as well. They find that themselves have hampers, like John Lennon. If you just it's just, there's no business. I'm telling you, we all hear about how dangerous a firefighter is. We all hear about how dangerous a fisherman is. You show me a business that has a bigger body count than pop music and rock and roll, you'd be hard pressed to find one.
And so we can take this full circle back to Russell Brand, and we can speculate on, if Russell was invited to step up and do a bit of work for the control system and start doing what he's told and fulfilling this agenda they've got laid out for him, he doesn't really have the option to say no, and that could be what we're viewing here.
I think they have the option to say no, but the career is over. And I think that's why certain bands
that's a best case scenario, I suppose.
But I think but there are bands who are on their way up there, and comedians and actors who are on their way up there, and you can tell they pissed off the system on some level, and they vanished into obscurity or back playing clubs again.
Another one is Muse. Another band is Muse. They made songs like Uprising, and they kind of disappeared, and now they've come back, and they're very mediocre and wishy-washy and not really saying anything of any substance.
I was suspicious of Muse from the beginning. I think that album is truly appalling. There's that album with that song Uprising on it. There's something not right with that album. It's recorded in a very funny way. I actually think that they were a psyop from the start, to be honest with you, Mark. Okay. And that song to me is an appalling dirge. I never trust that band in the beginning. When I heard that album, I was saying musically there's something wrong here. There's just all kinds of weird tonal qualities. The album is almost unlistenable, and I think that album is loaded with all kinds of triggers and NLP stuff. I really do. And in the future, I think somebody will do a breakdown of Muse and figure out that they were just as they were a very dodgy bunch from the start. Whoever set them up will probably find that some Cambridge research labs invented them or something. That's just my opinion on that band. But and again, the truthers all fell for that. Muse, they're our band, and then they go on tour with U2. Oh, they betrayed us. This whole need for a salvation, need for a Christ-like figure, need for someone to lead them to, because it takes away the one responsibility that they fear most of all, taking care of their own asses.
And when it comes to navigating this whole truth movement, this whole arena of information, as we've said, there's so many counterclaims and counterattacks and conflicting information. It seems to me that all you're really left with at the end of the day is evidence, as far as evidence is available, and then you're just left with your own intuition and your own judgment, how it resonates with you. Does it feel right?
It is difficult, but you see, this is the wisdom process. People have to learn wisdom. They have to be prepared to know that they followed the wrong team for a while. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is where that comes from. It's a defending, to use Russell Brand's favourite term, the narrative. That's really what it is. And I subscribe to the whole Nietzschean idea that ultimately truth is unknowable. Absolute truth is unknowable because all language is metaphor. And there's a lot of freedom when you approach like that the truth is a journey mostly and not a destination. But so many people in this movement have been conditioned to think there's going to be a final moment of resolution, a battle of Armageddon, a day of salvation. It's all going to happen. The bankers are all going to be arrested. The Pope is going to be arrested. None of those things are ever going to happen. That's all programming you've gotten from Hollywood, that the good guy wins at the end of the movie and runs off into the sunset with the girl, or from religious programming where there's a battle of Armageddon and Jesus comes back. That's where you got that idea. That's where people get that idea. That's where I got that idea until we all woke up. We realized that there may not be, or there probably won't never be, a moment of resolution. But along the way, the journey is fantastic because what you're really discovering is truths about yourself, the most wonderful and important and poignant exploration of all. And maybe that's the ultimate reason for waking up. And if all of us, instead of looking for a moment of salvation or a person that brings salvation, were to all come upon that realization that the journey is really personal and internal, and it's about our own personal salvation, and enough of us did that together, then we would save the world. We would save the world. We'd save the world through our own even personal evolution, one person at a time.
We're at an interesting point here in the UK, particularly because we've got all these revelations that have come out in the mainstream press, because a lot of people don't take notice of things that are revealed until it's from a mainstream source. It can't be true unless the BBC and the Daily Mail say so, sadly. But we've had all these revelations about parliamentary paedophilia, institutionalised paedophilia and child abuse in the establishment. The Jimmy Savile saga drags on. We've had Rolf Harris being sent down in the last week, and people are shocked to discover that he was a wrong-un. And we've got this Leon Britton sort of, paedophile dossier thing brewing at the moment. And I feel that we're at the best point we've ever been for the lid to be lifted on this whole sick, sorry, filthy, corrupt, grotesque establishment that we have and the true nature of them. It's the best point we've ever got to in terms of the mainstream, the masses, finally coming to accept the true nature of the people that are running this country and running the world.
Well, I've been very, very in-depth involved in it, mainly through the Savile thing, mainly through my research and investigative journalism into the fact that Jimmy Savile was actually a serial killer. Yeah. And it's got me a tremendous amount of attention. I'm getting mainstream level numbers hitting my websites and blogs and everything now. And I'm getting very little, confrontation against that by most ordinary British people and Irish people. And I'll tell you something else. I'm generally probably in this scene known as Mr. Conservative. I take a long time to nail my colours to the mast on anything. I'm not comfortable that way, but I'm going to say this right here and now on your show, Mark, on your podcast, Mark. I think this is it. I think we have them. I think this is the one. We have now been, this is why I'm so vehement against people following the Russell Brand Pied Piper away from this. We are there. This is it. I'm not joking you. The more I look at it,
it's got to be, isn't it? If not now, then when?
This is it. This is it. And we must keep the metal to the pedal, the pedal to the metal. the angle on the grinder on the angle. We have to keep driving this one home, because I'll tell you how I know, and this is my message to the people in England. We did this in Ireland with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church were an enormous power here. They basically had everything they wanted. They ran this country with an iron fist, and it was the same paedophilia scams and the same crap that they did, that your parliamentarians are doing and your celebrities that are doing, top celebrities are doing, that we brought them down. And they have no power in this country now. They've lost all their power in a social sense, and they were completely destroyed. There you go. There's your proof. It can happen. This is the one. Now, what they're trying to try to do is, and I saw it here in Ireland when all the Catholic paedophile things took off, the Irish media was bombarded with studies from universities saying, oh, the Catholic priests, they don't really mean to be paedophiles. The nuns don't really mean to be abusive because, if they've been deprived of sexual longings and let's let them off, be easy on them. It's not their fault. And Irish people didn't fall for that. Good. What they're doing in the UK is you saw a story in the Telegraph yesterday. They're going to try and change the goalpost like all psychopaths do and say, oh, well, childhood is in a natural state anyway. It was invented by us. So if children want to have sex with adults, they should be allowed, which Cambridge University, of course, professors and academics were discussing in a major conference as late as last July. It's not going to happen. If you look at the comments on all the British mainstream newspapers, no one is falling for this. They're trying frantically to have children on shows like Coronation Street and EastEnders, having the characters in those shows having sexual relationships younger and younger and pregnancies younger and younger in order to create what I call the new norm, the psychopathic new norm. It's not flying. You people in the UK have your golden opportunity now. This is the revolution you've been waiting for, and this is why you must reject Russell Brand and all this spiritual conscious revolution crap. You have them on the run, and this is one of the few examples where people power can really win. Yesterday they put out some lady something Schloss or something, Butler Schoss or something like that, to head the commission on the investigation into the parliamentary paedophiles. She looks just like Jimmy Savile. She looks like Jimmy Savile in drag. They're taking the piss out of people. This is their let them eat cake mentality. They're laughing at people. Let's give them some. And she was the same one who chaired the Diana Commission. They're laughing at you. They think they're going to win, but we're uncovering their tactics and their behaviour more and more and faster all the time. Yeah. And we have them on the run. When I put out the idea first on my old radio show, The Philosophy of Now, that Jimmy Savile was absolutely a serial killer, the profiling from my own work on psychopathology, coupled with the investigative journalism of people like David A. Yallop back in the 1970s, and all the other aspects of the circumstantial evidence pointed to the fact that Jimmy Savile absolutely was a serial killer who kept momentums of his victims, and that's what half the clothes in a so-called mother's wardrobe were. They weren't his clothes, they were the clothes of women he'd murdered. This is what psychopathic serial killers do.
And he was showing them off. He did that program with Louis Theroux, where he's showing off his wardrobe. And
they get serious psychopaths get a thrill. It's called the rush. They get a rush of dopamine, a sexual thrill, and if they can mock people in a high-profile TV program, the thrill is even greater. So he was actually getting a big sexual thrill while that was being broadcast.
Do you know what somebody suggested to me a while back? You know this sort of yodel that he used to do, the sort of this little sort of catchphrase thing of his. Somebody suggested that could well be him mocking the sound that many of his victims made when they were being abused
and murdered. Yep.
It's worth considering, isn't it?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Nothing. We're talking about a demon black magician who was working for the royals. Let's get this out. Let's get this out in the open now. These people are not like us. These are, in my new book, Valpurgis Night, I'm very heavily involved in the study of the black magic forces behind, the black hexan forces behind Germanic royalty and how they destroyed Europe. And they're also, what is the British royal family? They're Germans, and their particular form of it's sort of a black hexan paganism is definitely shows all over Savile's behaviour. He was a trained black occultist. Black Hexan pagan occultist. He absolutely was from that scene, and he only could have learned that because he had access to royalty. And the reason why he had access to royalty is because his mother, the Duchess, really was a duchess. She was definitely the bastard offspring of royalty, and that's why he enjoyed royal privilege while he did what he did. Now, it's now come out now that I had people on my YouTube channel saying, "Oh, Thomas, you're just scaring people again. You've absolutely no evidence that Stavel is like this, blah, 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 blah." And then the other day it comes out that he had rings made of the glass eyeballs.
There you go.
People, and here
it's it's in the Daily Mail, so it must be true.
So then, do I get an apology? Do I say, "Oh, fair play, Thomas, you were right"? Oh no, of course they just vanish, or they'll find some other strawman argument to pick apart. Oh, you got the name of you got the sequence in which the Moors murderers killed their victims wrong. Therefore, all Thomas Sheridan's information on Savile and all that scene in Manchester in the 60s is wrong. Everything is wrong, and that's how they think and that's how they behave. But I don't care. You in the UK. This is your William Wallace moment. Yeah. This is what you've been waiting for, and you can do it without firing a shot, being antagonistic or troublemakers in terms of a violent or an aggressive sense. You can do it all just by using your minds, your brains, and not letting this story die, and digging and digging and digging until it all comes out. Because all you have to do is look at Cameron's face on that show with, what was his name? Who was that on a morning TV show in Britain? Paul Schofield showed him the list, and he looked at it, and his face literally went green, and he made a statement along the lines of, "This is homophobic." The old cultural Marxism.
It wasn't in the script, that one.
Yeah, it wasn't in the script.
Yeah,
that's it. That was the look of sheer terror that the game was up.
This has to be it. This has to be our moment.
You're not going to get an opportunity like this ever again.
Well, exactly. And, of course, the danger is that the powers that be, or the powers that have been soon, are going to use an opportunity now to divert people's attention away from all this stuff that they don't want them looking at. So it would be the ideal opportunity for them to stage one of their famous false flag terror events, or concoct some other item in the news that causes everyone to look away from here and start looking over here. And meanwhile, they can do a bit of damage limitation and recovery and start to get their stories straight and do a bit of covering up, while everybody else is focused on something else. So people really do need to be vigilant, I would suggest, in the sort of days and weeks ahead. And if something like this does occur, ask lots of questions about it.
Well, Mr. Cameron has already started talking about deadly killer viruses and all kinds of superbugs and all this crap.
This is their MO, isn't it? This is what they do.
This is how psychopaths are. This is the only way they can function, by creating another distraction. Hey, look over here! Russell Brand was distraction number one. Now they're going to have to up the ante to something a bit more heavy. So they might restart the IRA. You might have suddenly two soldiers shot dead or a couple of soldiers shot dead in Northern Ireland, or a couple of PSNI people shot dead, and suddenly the Irish and the British governments will be flooding the border with troops talking about dissident Republicans and all this crap. Something like that might happen. Just be on the lookout. It might not be as spectacular like you think it's going to be. It may be something very, very subtle. It may be the death of a high-profile celebrity or a royal, and they'll wrap a whole sort of new motif around that to distract you. But keep the faith. Keep the fire burning, because, like I said, this is the one. Do not be distracted by... even the false flags are great for distracting the truthers, because they'll spend all the time investigating the false flag for years and years. Yeah, which is what 9/11 was. That's why the 9/11 conspiracy was already in place long before anything happened there. Those attacks took place. They've always been there. They've been there since the day of Kennedy. So don't get caught up in the minutiae of what the new false flag is. Keep on the paedophile thing. They're never going to get away with this one, and they're never going to ever be able to water it down.
This has got to be what brings them down. It's got to be, if not now, then when. Before we conclude today, I did want to get into the question of applying humour and satire to this whole truth conspiracy arena, because you're a satirist yourself, and I often look at some of the cover stories that we're given. I mean, they're great sources of comedy to me, the cover stories that you're given for certain events. My favourite is Bin Laden killed in the Pakistan compound, i.e. house. and his body dumped at sea in accordance with his Muslim traditions, because they're respectful like that. They murder a man, but they do respect his religious leanings, And then they dumped his body in the sea, and no, you can't see it because it's too grisly. And we do care about you. We don't want you to see these upsetting pictures. And, we didn't know where he was for all these years, but we suddenly found him watching TV, and he was on every channel as he flicked through with the remote control. I mean, that whole story was just pure comedy to me, and how Obama can come out and keep a straight face as he announces it is beyond me. And then you've got the picture of the incident room where Hillary Clinton's got her hand across her mouth as if, oh my God, and they're supposed to be watching live coverage of the Navy SEALs taking out this compound, and then it emerged later that it was fake and the computers weren't even turned on, and then, oh yeah, those Navy SEALs just happened to die in a helicopter accident a few months later. I mean, that's not particularly funny, but the rest of the story is utterly farcical. And I think there is room for humour and satire in all this, because the world, when you get down to it, is a pretty ridiculous, absurd place. And it seems that the only way to appropriately respond to it sometimes is to just have a bloody good laugh at it.
The jester is the only member of court who can mock the king and queen and live. And the joker is always the last card that you put back in the deck and the first card you take out. And that's like their magic way of saying to us, we can take you down that way. And I have been using satire and humour going back many years, all my life, and right back into the early Usenet days, we were ripping the piss out of an Irish culture group, out of the sectarian groups in Northern Ireland, but on both sides, and the Republicans and the Loyalists, and also a neo-Nazi group that was starting up in Ireland back then called the Irish Nationalist Network. And I mean, so the stuff was raunchy, it was filthy, but fuck me, it was funny. I set up a Sinn Féin sex chat line where you could call up and get like a woman give you election results from like the 1932 South Armagh by-election, or things like that, or the horrors the British committed against the Irish. And this stuff was so funny and so powerful that after the trouble that a Good Friday Agreement ended, I had loyalists and Republicans in Northern Ireland telling me they were pissing themselves laughing reading the stuff I was doing. Yeah. And that was my way of fighting back. And and that kind of thing. And we had like there was all kinds of things like that, and it was often filthy, but it was it was done very, very funny. Yeah. And I'm never going to stop that. You look at my Facebook page, I'm telling as many jokes as I am talking about serious subjects, because it's such a powerful thing. I mean, when I saw the thing where for last Halloween they had a Jimmy Savile costume, and all the sanctimonious media were like, oh, it's offensive, we should ban it. I wanted to go out and get one, because that's a great way of reminding people of what these people in charge do.
And it'll keep the trick-and-treaters away from your door for sure.
This is what our pagan ancestors did. This is how you do it. You manifest the devil to make fun of him. Yeah. And it was like, I was even joking there the other day about going to a fancy dress barbecue, and I was going to go dressed as Bin Laden zombie with like seaweed hanging off me and everything. This is how you do it. Yeah. This is how you do it. And okay, if you're raunchy and filthy and you're just raunchy and filthy, you're not funny. Okay, you're not funny. But if you're raunchy, filthy, and offensive, and making a point, you're a genius, because you can actually target the subconscious of people very powerfully. I did a stand-up event in Dublin a few months back, about 4 months back now, in front of 400 people in a hardcore mainstream comedy club. And I got out, that went down brilliantly, and I got out more truth about the psychopathic control grid and what psychopaths are, and cults and the dangers of everything else like that. And I'm ripping the piss out of people like Simon Cowell. And I got more of the truth movement out to the mainstream in that 15 minutes I was on stage than I ever have done in all the millions of views I have on YouTube and everywhere else. Yeah. And that tells you the power of it.
Truth comedy, that's what we need.
And it moves into the mainstream. It moves in, that's the thing. Look at the audiences that Bill Hicks and George Carlin reached.
Yeah.
Comedy and art, music will reach the mainstream.
Exactly.
Not running down the street with a megaphone or a bullhorn going 9/11 was an inside job or any of that stuff. That's what the control system wants from you. They do not want clever, funny bastards.
Yeah.
So be a clever, funny bastard.
Comedy hits home and music hits home.
Yeah.
In a big way. And you've got, in America, you've got the guys that do Joy Camp, and you've got James Corbett, who's a great satirist as well. And do you read Chris Spivey's work, Chris Spivey's blog here in the UK?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Absolutely.
And here in Ireland, we have a great guy and a great comedian called Aidan Killian, who's doing all the stuff about the falsehood of the banks and money and all this stuff through his own stand-ups in the comedy scene here. And he's actually doing the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So he's moved to the next level. They're out there. This is our front line. We have to box clever because they've been very good at using this stuff against us. You look at like Ben Elton and people like that, how they've used him to push cultural Marxism very successfully and put that, we can do that ourselves, push our own agenda.
Absolutely. And they're taking the piss out of us and they're having a laugh at us, be sure of that. So we need to do it back. And, these psychopaths don't have a sense of humour. They're never going to see the world the way the regular population might and be able to make a joke of it. So the joke is on them, ultimately. Yeah,
psychopaths and cult leaders and cult members do not get satire. They simply do not. If you tell them a dirty joke, that maybe you're saying you're making fun of a politician, and you tell a dirty joke, they will actually think that all you're doing is saying dirty words. You're perverted. They do not see the subtle nuance.
They take it literally. They can't put it into context.
Yeah, and that's what and psychopaths only laugh when other people are laughing. They look around. That's why you have canned laugh in American comedy shows, because that was the way the psychopaths in Hollywood could only know. Oh, that's when the joke comes in, when you hear the laughing.
And it's in Obama's script.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. All right, mate. Well, really good chat today, and we've covered some great points. Really good to kick it to you. Do you just want to remind people where they can go online to find more of your work, what your website is?
My website is thomassheridanarts.com. My latest book is called Valpurgis Night Volume 1. The link to it is on there. You can see a little. And my other book, Animal of the Cycle, is available there. You can see a little click which is very applicable to what we're talking about tonight, this morning, social engineering and through culture and comedy and art and everything. That's up there on a little tab called Bookshop. I'm going to be back in the UK in September to do some speaking dates. I'm already in Hebden Bridge in Yorkshire on the 15th, I think, and then I'm off to New Horizons on the 16th to the 15th up in St. Anne's. And a few of the places that you spoke in recently, hopefully I'll get up the hole in a few other places. So I'm looking forward to doing that because I've got so many friends and supporters in England, and I always love getting back over there to see them. So look out for me over in the UK in September.
Yeah, good stuff. Are you on the Truth Juice circuit as well? Do you do those days?
I've done two tours of them when I'm in the UK, so I know those guys too as well.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, Thomas. Well, we live in interesting times, and I certainly hope you're right about this being our moment here in the UK to lift the lid. There's certainly a part of me that feels that is the case. Time will tell, but yeah, thanks for your perspectives on things today.
Thank you very much, Mark, and my best to you and your listeners and people in the UK. This is it. Go for it.
Indeed. Cheers, mate.